for Dr. J.
So got the thing on, got it on camera or phone. Everything is kosher.
Now, there is a lens through which you could look at this whole thing, and that's literary theory.
Well, I actually one of the topics I thought about was the state of English literature, or the state of the English department currently. I thought that would be too nerdy.
Well, see, you've spent a lot of time, and so have I, criticizing literary theory, but there is benefit to it. Mm-hmm. It is a good way to diagnose the world. And some of it is dead on. Like, a lot of Foucault is right, especially the panopticon. The idea of surveillance is especially true with social media. Mm-hmm. I think if he were alive today, he would say, "I told you so."
Yeah, probably so. Okay.
Discipline and Punish should be mandatory reading, because it is deeply disturbing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is horrifying what he outlines, and it becomes hard to argue with it. Despite all of his other issues, the knowledge power thing.
Yeah.
But the panopticon. Yeah, that shit is real.
Yeah.
You don't have
explain it to the listeners.
Well, it's actually pretty simple. It comes from a design that Jeremy Bentham, the great kind of the father of utilitarianism, had created this diagram of the perfect prison, and it's almost circular in nature. All the cells are on the outside, and in the middle there's a tower in which the guards can watch anyone they want at any given time. Mm-hmm. And what Foucault does is he takes this idea and talks about surveillance. You don't actually have to be under surveillance to have the fear that you're under surveillance.
Right.
So you are already controlling your behavior based on the fear, not based on actual surveillance, but the fear that you might be under surveillance.
Right.
And then look at social media. Speaking of social media, I'll let you take over for this one.
No, you go ahead.
No, the New York Post. You're going to talk about that first.
Well, no, it's just that story that, and like I told you, I'm going to be doing the beta files on this week. The story, the whole Biden thing. It's not necessarily. I don't care about Hunter Biden. I don't care about laptops or anything like that. What happened was, the minute the story hit social media, they took it down. And like I was telling you at the restaurant, the thing that aggravated me the most was not that they took the story down, but it was that the White House communications retweeted it, and they shut her down. And to me, that's overstepping a line, because I don't care what administration is in the White House. I don't care who is speaking for the White House inside that administration. You do not shut down any communication coming from the White House. Period. It does not matter who's president. You do not shut that communication down. That is our communication. That is public communication. They shut her account down. They limited her speech.
Yes, they did. Well, and
that is crossing a line.
That's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
The question is why. This is more disturbing.
Go ahead and talk about what you were talking about.
Which part?
What you were talking about with Brett Weinstein and the lit classes you used to teach.
A lot of the stuff that Brett Weinstein talks about, this kind of suspicion of media, and now I would have to include social media, is justified. In fact, I felt when you first showed me the Dark Horse podcast, I got really uncomfortable watching it. So I'm like, I've heard this before. Where have I? Oh my God, I have said this before. And I said it I used to teach this anti-establishment lit class every semester at my old job. And prior to that, I taught it when I was at Ole Miss. This was during the Patriot Act. And I would say this really offensive shit that would make my really conservative students uncomfortable and, quite frankly, angry. They would yell at me in class. They would get so bent out of shape. And I'd walk out on a high every time because I knew I made them care about something. But I would say this stuff all the time. Look at media and social media. They're not there for us. They're not there to give us information. They're not there to teach us or educate us or keep us up to date in what's going on in the world. They are there to make fucking money.
Yep.
That's all they care about.
That's all they care about.
And how are they going to do that? They're going to keep you watching.
Yep.
How do they keep you watching? They scare the bejesus out of you.
Yep.
And they make you angry. It's about fear and emotion, and that's all it ever is. And he talks about that.
Yeah.
And he's right.
Yep.
And so is she. She talks about the same thing. His wife. What's her name? Heather
Hayek. Well, and Matt Taibbi talks about it. Taibbi wrote a whole book on it.
You said something a few months ago. You said, I found my tribe.
Yeah.
And I have too. Between Foucault's ideas of surveillance and between what Weinstein says, and I haven't read Taibbi yet, I'm ashamed to say. You've been pushing me to read him now for months.
Ever since I finished it.
This is where we are. And you actually, and I don't want to steal your thunder, because you use the word narrative over and over and over again.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah. Is it that I should be clear, Douglas Murray would probably have a field day. Who's they? Who is we? Because he does that to Weinstein. I love that man.
Isn't Douglas Murray the best?
Again, I disagree with his politics.
He's a conservative.
He is. I disagree with his well, he's an English conservative.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
It's true. But he's also gay. And that's what's crazy about it.
Yeah, and over there you can thread that needle.
Right.
Because they don't have the same hang-ups about things like abortion and gay marriage that we do. They don't care. That shit's already been settled.
What he said on Joe Rogan when Rogan's like talking about non-binaries, he's like, "Oh yes, it's the how do you say it? He said, I identify as, hey, look at me.
What scares me is that they have done something that no media outlet should do.
Yeah.
And they've chosen a side.
Yeah.
And they will do anything in their power to preserve that meta-narrative.
So the other story that broke last week that wasn't covered in the media, we had to find out from his podcast, was that Weinstein got shut down on Facebook for no reason.
Oh, yes.
And then
yes, he did.
Well,
you know the reason, okay.
but he got shut down on Facebook, so he tweeted about it, and then a Facebook woman came on and apologized on Twitter, and they reinstated his channel on Facebook. Now his complaint, and he brings up a really good question that he posed to her. He has 450,000 followers. He's got sway.
Yeah, how was this an accident?
How is it an accident? But the other thing that he points out is, how do other people who don't have 450,000 followers, how do they get reinstated when this mistake, quote-unquote mistake, happens to them?
Oh, they don't.
They don't get reinstated.
They don't.
And it's all a part of controlling that narrative. It
is, and what Weinstein's good at, and this is another literary theory term that I actually do. See, I don't hate literary theory. It sounds like I do. I don't.
Right.
One of the terms that literary theorists often use is demystification.
Yeah.
Is that what he's doing is he's pulling the curtain back, and you see the narrative for what it is.
Yeah.
You don't even think in terms of narrative
Right.
until someone tells you, no, this isn't reality.
Right.
None of this is real.
Yeah.
What's actually happening is that media is shaping something for you and making you believe this shit is real.
Yep.
That scares the absolute bejesus out of me. That people buy into it and say, they're reporting the facts. Well, and they're not wrong.
Right.
They report the facts with a slant.
Yeah. A point of view.
A point of view. And they are, and it would be fine, and I railed against this in my Hum 115 class, my critical thinking class. It would be fine if they gave you the facts and then invited someone on to give commentary after the facts.
Yeah.
That's not what they do. What do? They give you the facts, they mix it in with commentary so that you start to think that the commentary and the facts are the exact same thing. Because you don't understand rhetoric, not you, but the average viewer doesn't think in terms of rhetorical analysis, and they kind of should.
Yeah. Gerald Graff calls it meta-commentary.
And he's right.
Gerald Graff, what Gerald Graff did was he gave spin a scientific turn, and he's the best at explaining how spin works by introducing this idea of meta-commentary.
Yes.
And what he says is that you give the facts, you give your statement about the facts, and then you add, on top of it, language that tells the reader how they're supposed to think about those facts.
That's right.
So that you're pointing them in a specific direction so that they don't go any other avenue.
And they don't even know it.
And they don't realize it.
And see,
that's journalism.
That's the problem. And the problem that we're seeing now is that it exists on the left in a way it never has before.
Yeah.
And social media and media in general are responsible for it.
Yeah, they're working in tandem now.
Yeah. It's the Fox effect.
Yep.
Once these other news outlets realized, well, if Fox can do it on the right, why don't we rebrand ourselves and start adopting a left view?
You're freaking out the computer here.
How?
I'm doing whatever it was you were doing.
Sorry.
It's all right. The computer was doing this. Yeah, it started with the Fox. Okay.
You got to go back.
It starts with CNN. It starts with CNN with shows like Crossfire and those shows that showed up in the late 80s.
Yeah. With Tucker Carlson before he...
That was in the 90s, but yeah.
Joined the dark side.
Yeah, well, remember, he went to MSNBC first.
Yes. Oh, I know.
And then went to Fox. When he went to MSNBC, what was hilarious was he showed up at MSNBC without the bow tie. And then he comes to Fox and he puts a necktie on. Like on MSNBC, he didn't have any tie. It was just a blazer and a button down. And then he gets to Fox and he put a necktie on. And that's what he wears now is a necktie.
We are in an interesting spot. So yeah, you were saying. So it starts with CNN.
Starts with CNN. Really, Matt Taibbi in Hate Inc., he goes all the way back to the 70s with the point-counterpoint type shows. And then, of course, Crossfire is a part of
Oh, you're talking about Buckley.
Yeah.
Point-counterpoint.
Yep.
What a great show that was.
Yeah.
You got both sides really represented on the same show.
But what happens is, and of course it starts to get political, and that's when SNL did that bit with Aykroyd and Jane Curtin, where they were doing a point-counterpoint, and it was about the most ridiculous thing. Like somebody did, a Hollywood guy did something, and they were arguing about it, and it was just the most ridiculously pointless thing. And of course, you know that wonderful line, "Jane, you ignorant slut."
Yeah.
But then it evolves into Crossfire, right? And that's when you really start to see the idea of ratings seep in.
Which point-counterpoint didn't care about.
Yeah. Well, neither did Meet the Press.
No, it didn't.
Until Tim Russert.
Yep.
Because Tim was so good, the ratings went up. And the problem with David Gregory was the ratings went down with Gregory. So they had to go back up. That's when they brought in Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd knew and understood how to get people to watch. And I love Chuck Todd. I'm a big fan of Chuck Todd.
Oh, I know.
But there are episodes of Meet the Press where he is just trying to incite them.
Because he knows what sells.
He knows what sells. So you see it there. But then, you get into the 90s and the birth of Fox News, and Roger Ailes, no matter how evil and stupid and whatever you want to say about him, he was a genius.
Well, he also knew what sold.
He knew what sold. He had taken all, and I actually went over this in another podcast, but he had taken all these different things from the last 2 decades, right? From the late 70s all the way up to the mid 90s. The magazine shows like Inside Edition, Hard Copy, all those, right? The talk shows like Donahue and Sally Jesse, right? He's taking tips from them. He puts them all together. And he picks a specific audience that he targets, right? Which is middle class, conservative America. And he brands all of it towards them.
Yeah.
And he hooks them. And he does it through graphics. He brought in stuff from the NFL. He brought in stuff from the NBA. All those graphics and shit that the sports guys were using, he brings that into cable news. The more sensational you can make it, the more eyes you're going to have.
And they truthfully could not care less about the conservative agenda.
No, they don't care.
He could have just as easily said, let's go for a liberal audience.
Well, and what did MSNBC do? They retooled.
That's right.
To do just that.
Well, they saw what made money. They saw, oh my God, there's a gold mine here. If we just grab this audience, we don't want to get conservatives. That's already been done.
Yeah.
There's this whole audience here waiting to get angry, and we can feed them.
Yeah. And then in the middle of all that, CNN, that had been the reputable source, bought into it too. The difference between CNN, and I've told my students this, the difference between CNN and MSNBC and Fox is that CNN will sway with whoever is in office.
Yeah.
That you can see them sway back and forth. The other two have planted their flags. CNN has not planted a flag. It looks like right now, they're completely anti-Trump. Right, that's the banner right now, but they'll change that banner.
Yep.
If Biden gets elected a week from now, they'll change the banner.
But
they won't be as Biden ho as MSNBC,
no.
And they won't be as anti-Biden as Fox News. But there will be a shift.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why they haven't made as much money as they could have, because they're not consistent.
No, they're not.
And the other thing, the narrative. Is we talk about people shaping the narrative. The media is not shaping the narrative. They're inventing it.
Yeah.
There's no narrative until they make it. And they're using
social media to perpetuate that narrative that they've just invented.
Well,
it should have been a red flag for anybody, including myself and anybody else who was actually paying attention. It should have been a red flag the moment like Good Morning America and Today's Show and CBS and CBS This Morning all started doing social media updates. I think the one on Today's Show is what's trending. And they have this huge TV screen and they show what's actually happening on Twitter right now.
They also, every time one of the anchors talks or the commentators talks, they flash up their Twitter account. Mm-hmm. So you can find them on Twitter.
Yep.
Where they are continuing to create the narrative there.
Yep.
Well, the narrative's been created. All they're doing now is perpetuating it.
Yep.
And in the case of social media, eliminating anybody who doesn't support the narrative. Mm-hmm. Let me get my head back.
Yeah, get your head back in the game.
It's the problem. The problem isn't just that they're perpetuating the narrative that the media has already created. It's they're eliminating anyone or suppressing anybody who says something that doesn't fit the narrative that they're perpetuating. And that's exactly what they did with the Post.
Yeah.
Well, the New York Post, not the
New
Washington
York Post. Because, and it's weird because, and I've heard several different commentators talk about this over the past week. they're finding it hard to defend the New York Post because it's the New York Post.
Well, they're not a great newspaper.
No, they're not.
But they've been around, and Weinstein points this out, or Weinstein.
200 years.
They've been around for a while.
Yeah, they've been around longer
Than the
Times and the Washington Post. Like the Washington Post, I think they've been around 70 years longer than the Washington Post and 54 years longer than the New York Times.
The New York Times, all the news that's fit to shit.
Yeah. So, and it's just like, okay. And here's the other thing. And this is what nobody has talked about this. And the only reason why I know about it is because I looked it up. Alexander Hamilton started the New York Post because the Federalists were so upset, or the Whigs were so upset that Jefferson got nominated, or that Jefferson won the presidency. They started the newspaper to write against Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, so they've always had a problem.
Yeah.
Like from the very beginning. Holy shit, I did not know that.
I didn't know it either until I read it. I was like, oh my God, that is better than getting canceled by Twitter. Hey boys, he raised $10,000 from a group of investors. Can you imagine? He's the pitch he's making. Okay, so we don't like what Jefferson's doing. We don't like the fact that we don't like his policies. We're going to start a newspaper. It was originally named the New York Evening Post.
And then over the years...
And then over years, they dropped the evening. Murdoch bought it in 1976. That's when it took its historic conservative shift.
The Antichrist.
Yeah. And it became more tabloid because what he wanted to do was make a version of the Sun here.
Now, the point you made when we were on our way over here that I don't want you to forget to make here is how other media outlets are covering it, and to be fair, are not covering the real story.
Okay, so there's two layers of this story, right? So the immediate layer is the Hunter Biden thing. Who cares? Okay. And the sad thing is that by this point, we're a week out from this, and they have corroborated everything that was in the original story. Okay. And they've shown that everything that was in there actually has teeth, right? That's what the Times and the Post are covering. And they're doing their damnedest to limit how much you actually know about this story with Hunter Biden. What neither one of them are talking about is the fact that Twitter canceled it. In fact, there was one story that the New York Times ran, and they ran it on Friday, about the power of social media right now. And they briefly mentioned the whole Post debacle, and then moved on. They were focusing more on quote-unquote disinformation in social media. So they're going after the Russian track, right? Now, while all this is happening at the end of the week, I didn't get to tell you about all this because there's so much about this story.
I didn't know until today with the Dark Horse podcast from 2 days ago. I'd never heard of this.
Oh my God, anyway. Yeah, I've been all over this for a week now. While all this is happening, do you remember, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week, the Director of National Security and the head of the FBI came out and said that, there's not all this what you're hearing about disinformation is actually not as bad as you think. And they talked about how there are threats coming from China, Russia, and Iran, right? And one of the big things from Iran was that Proud Boys email. Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay. There was an email that went out to a bunch of Democratic supporters, right?
You got to be clear because your 2 viewers may not know it either.
I know.
Sorry, 11.
11. We're averaging 11, Jason. Anyway, there was a email that went out to all these Democratic supporters from the Proud Boys organization or something like that, right? And it's like, really? But in the email it said, vote for Trump or we will find you. right? Now, the intelligence agencies have flagged it to Iran. They're saying this email came from Iran.
So now they're trying to
The
get in on it.
other thing is, and Taibbi talked about this on his podcast last Friday. He said, if you just stop and look, it's kind of like one of those Nigerian prince emails.
Oh, God.
It's so blatantly fake. Like, it's from Proud Boys organization or Proud Boys Institute or whatever. It's like, there's no way the Proud Boys are that organized. And no way can they actually have all that information, all that voter information. Because in the email, they detail, like, they know where you live, they know your social security number, they will come for you and they will ruin you if you don't vote for Trump.
Which isn't true.
Which isn't true.
It's a scam.
Yeah. It's a total scam, right? Maddow ran with it. So the intelligence agency and the director of the FBI also had to talk about that stupid email.
Even though it was a joke.
And say, this is fake. This is not real.
So now Iran is trying to get in on this?
Yeah.
Well, the Russians were doing it,
But
so why not them?
what the director of intelligence and the FBI, head of the FBI, both said was, there is disinformation coming in. We're seeing a lot of activity, but it's not the volume that you would think. It's very small. The amount that's happening is very small. And they referenced what Facebook figured out with the Russian bots. That, like, the Russians, the total, if you actually summed up the amount of money that the Russians actually spent on their 2016 disinformation campaign, it was like $1.6 million. And they're like, now I want you to stop and think about this. Like, actually, it was Sagar that talked about this, Sagar and Jetty. He said, think about this. The Biden and Trump campaigns spend that in a day. They spend that kind of money on Facebook and Twitter and all that in a day.
How much?
1.6 million. He said, stop and think about that. You know, the amount, yes, there is disinformation coming in, but it is not what you think it is. It's not the volume, right? It's not enough to actually sway an election. And so that's what they were going out, because all this was happening, right? What this all has to do with the New York Post story.
This has got to be funny.
Oh my God. What this all has to do with the New York Post story is that Weinstein points this out when he gets his response from the chick from Facebook, right? Sorry, she's a chick from Facebook. I'm a Gen Xer. Get the fuck over it. So, the one who responds to him on Twitter, he looks her up. She's the, I don't know if you got this far in the podcast yet. She's like the information person from Facebook.
Yes.
Formerly, like, a Pelosi person. Like, she used to work for Pelosi.
A staffer, yeah.
A staffer for Pelosi. Yep. All of this is being controlled by the heads of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And I was telling Lauren about this yesterday. She's like, because she was talking about, Trump and Biden and all this, and I told her my misgivings about Biden, and she said, well, he's in charge, right? And I'm like, no, he's not.
No. Mm-mm.
There are people who are not elected that are running that campaign.
Yeah, he is the...
And they're setting the agenda.
He's the face of the campaign, but he's not running it.
Pelosi's not running it. There are people telling Pelosi what the Democratic agenda is, and she's following through with it. Yeah. Same thing with Biden. The same thing is happening on the right.
Yes.
The difference is that Trump has bucked them over the past 4 years.
Yep.
And you know when he bucks them because they don't like it.
Yeah.
But they keep their mouths shut because, and I explained this to Lauren, I said, the one thing that he has done for the past 4 years that has kept the Republican Party from mutiny is the fact that he has given them ungodly amounts of lower court judges.
Which is why they let him get away. Well, and the other thing.
And the tax cut.
Well, that's two, but three is that any time the Republican Party can get legislation through, they know he'll sign it.
Yeah.
And as long as he's there, because he's kind of a lackey too.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you want to say about the man, they know if McConnell pushes it through, Trump is going to sign it.
Yep.
And they cannot afford to lose that right now. So they don't like him.
Well, my point with her was that, the heads of the Democratic Party are controlling the narrative for all of the Democrats. The heads of the Republican Party are controlling the narrative for the Senate.
I think you need to name these organizations. They're called the DNC and the RNC.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who, the director of the DNC sets the agenda. The director of the RNC sets the agenda.
Yeah.
It's exactly what's happening.
And what we're seeing with social media and national media, because the left has more national media outlets than the right does, we're getting the DNC agenda.
Yeah.
And social media is falling in line.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that people are not talking about is Jack Dorsey giving, Ibram X. Kendi, what was it, $4 million? Millions of dollars. I can't remember how much it was. But gave it to him for anti-racism or anti-racist programs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're not. I don't mind the fact that he has a political agenda. Everyone's got a party a political alignment. I think it's great.
Yeah. But
much like us in the classroom, social media should not be exercising their political agenda.
No.
We would get in huge trouble if we walked into a classroom and preached our political agenda to our students.
Yeah.
And you know what? We should.
Yeah.
We should get in trouble for that shit.
Yep.
Why aren't they?
I had to walk a thin line several weeks ago when I taught the Constitution. I had to walk a really thin line.
Yeah, but it's in the document. What you talked about, it is.
But again, there's meta commentary that you can slip into. You can easily spin it.
Yeah, but you didn't.
I did. What I did was I said, you're going to hear these stories. This is what they're talking about. And right here's what the document actually says.
Yeah. So we've seen, and it's on both sides, right?
Yeah.
With the infiltration of
this
media.
This is not new. The difference, the reason why the liberal agenda is so much in your face and the conservative is not, is because the liberal media has more of a foothold in the national conversation than the conservative media does. I mean, you can name off New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, MSNBC, CNN right now, right?
Yep.
CBS News,
Yep.
ABC News. These are all liberal establishments. Some more liberal than others. I mean, you look at the Huffington Post, it is much further left than a lot of the others. Now, name the conservatives. Oh, Fox News and Sinclair Group. Okay, and?
Drudge Report.
Yeah, Drudge Report. The Washington Times.
Yeah.
So there's 4.
Yeah. The conservative...
New York Post.
The Conservative Party in England has a much bigger representation. And the difference between them and us is that newspapers in England are openly aligned.
Yeah.
They tell you what they believe. I kind of respect that.
Well, okay, so you and I have actually talked about this before. Maybe it would be better.
I'm absolutely convinced.
If they just went ahead and said, you know what, if the New York Times said, you know what, we're liberal.
Yep. I would be okay with that.
MSNBC has all but done that.
They have. And again, I kind of respect them for it. Mm-hmm. Fox has done the same thing. Mm-hmm. Fox News has just more or less, when you've got your commentators going on the campaign trail to get a president elected, they're basically telling you, we're conservative.
Republican.
We're Republican. Yeah. Well, okay, and that's the other thing you have to talk about. Conservatism and the Republican Party are not the same thing anymore. Liberalism and the Democratic Party are not the same thing anymore. Yeah. They are very different.
And it depends on what. And this is the problem. And this gets into your fucking buddy,
Derrida?
Derrida, yeah.
Fucking buddy. We've got a few buddies, according to you. A few I'd rather have than others.
We have classified. You're not just a liberal anymore.
No.
You're a classic liberal. Mm-hmm. You're a green liberal. Mm-hmm. You're a radical
Democratic
liberal.
socialist.
You're a democratic socialist. I mean, you're on this flip side. You're a evangelical. You're a moderate conservative. You're an economic conservative. You've got the white supremacists. I mean, you've got all these different layers.
You do.
There is no real, and you can say that about the parties.
Well,
and I think what the libertarian movement has become are the Republicans that are starting to move more towards the middle.
Yeah.
And they feel uncomfortable with the far right influence.
Yes.
That's pressing. That's been pressing since the Tea Party.
I would agree with that. I would say that this is new.
Yeah.
This is new. This type of my friend at work who visits me on a regular basis says that and this is a perfect example. She says, I am a fiscal conservative and a social liberal. That group. Mm-hmm. So she falls right in the wheelhouse of the libertarians.
Yeah.
I mean, right in there. You know, and but there was a time when you could actually say the word liberal and you knew exactly what that meant. Mm-hmm. And we can't do that anymore.
But James Lindsay talks about
it. He does, but I can tell you right now, it's not the Democratic Party. It's not the Republican Party.
Right.
This is not about alignment anymore. This is about power.
Yeah. I've been saying that for a year.
I know.
It started to dawn on me with the midterms. So it's been more than a year.
Yep.
But this is a fight for power.
I am registered as a Democrat, and I do not tell most people that because, in fact, I feel more comfortable saying I'm a socialist than I do saying I'm a Democrat. If that tells you anything about how embarrassing.
The thing that comes out of your mouth is I'm a Marxist.
Well, because I would rather say that. What does it say though that I'm more comfortable saying I'm a Marxist than a Democrat? It says something about the party.
We really need to get those bumper stickers that I had mentioned back when Bush won in 2000. I told Sarah I was going to get bumper stickers made up. Because remember, it used to be a bumper sticker, don't blame me, I voted for Gore.
Yes.
I always told her, I said, I ought to get a bumper sticker that says, don't blame me, I'm a communist.
Yeah. Well, I want one that says, don't blame me, I voted for Marx.
Yeah.
He's my hero, man.
I know he is.
Because he said shit that needed to be said. But now we're looking at two parties who are so clearly concerned. They're more concerned with their survival than they are with the greater good.
Yeah.
Whereas conservatism in its rawest form, liberalism in its rawest form, is always concerned with the greater good.
Yeah.
They just go about it in two different ways.
Yeah.
One thinks that small government is best. Mm-hmm. One thinks that big government is best.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of where we are. We have left the most traditional view of liberalism and conservatism in the dust. So that now when you talk to people like my mom, probably your mom, she conflates the Democratic Party with liberalism, and they are not the same thing. They haven't been the same thing in
socialism.
Years. Oh my God.
If you're watching,
my God.
What did you tell me? You told me the story of your mom this morning that she's convinced that Joe Biden is going to turn us all socialist.
And I asked her what it meant. She's like, it means free stuff. It means giving everything away. I'm like, that's not what socialism means, Mom. Do some reading.
Free stuff.
And she read it, and she still, I don't think, quite understood what it means to own the means of production.
But
I said,
the thing is, my mom is watching the same stuff your mom is watching, and she's getting the same message.
But I tried to explain to her, I'm like, what it means to say that that the government owns the means of production, it means that the government's going to start making couches and doorknobs and cereal. I mean, honest to God, they don't want to do that shit.
They're already making American or government cheese.
Yes, they are, and it's awful stuff. It's horrible. You got to go to France for good cheese. And they're socialists. No, so I tried to tell her, I'm like, Mom, there's no way they do not want true socialism, because they all want to get a job in the private sector
when they're
afterward.
done.
That's exactly it. There are too many lobbyists for socialism to ever take root in this country.
Yeah.
It would never, and that's why I'm not worried about it. I told Mom, I'm like, what they want is socialized healthcare. They don't want socialized everything.
Right. They want a free market.
They want so the Republican Party wants a free, unregulated market.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party wants a free, regulated market, particularly regulating big business.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of ironic.
Because most of them are Democratic businesses.
Yes! See, this is my point.
But see, it's a talking point because they are not going to rein in Jeff Bezos.
No.
They're not going to rein in him any more than they did Bill Gates. When they popped Bill Gates back in the late 90s, early 2000s, did it really hurt Bill Gates? Did it really hurt Microsoft? No. They created shell companies to break them up, right? Look at Ma Bell. They broke her up. What happened?
Yep.
They became AT&T.
Yep. They talked about that on the podcast today too.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. I'm glad they're going after Google. Did you hear about how they're going after Google?
No, but that's good.
The Justice Department finally found a way to go after Google, and they're doing it with their deal with Apple, where when you buy an iPhone, the default search box is Google.
It's not going to be Safari anymore?
When you open Safari, the default search engine
I see. Is Google.
That was a deal that Tim Cook cut when Steve Jobs was still alive. And this has been Tim Cook's baby all along. Okay? He convinced Jobs this was a good idea. At the time, Google wasn't as big as it is now. Since they cut that deal, Cook has matured that deal. He has made sure that every time Google puts a new CEO up, he talks to them and makes sure the deal stays in place. And Google goes along with it because they're making a killing. But it's keeping Apple from having to build their own search engine.
Yeah.
And so they're going after them for that. That's the antitrust thing they're going after them with. And Google's argument is, but the thing is, the user can go in and change the search engine. That's great. You're still the default. That's the problem, right?
Well, but it could be worse.
Yeah.
Because Apple could eliminate Safari, and Chrome would be the app you'd have to use.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen. Because Safari's their baby, and they've been working on that for a while. The thing is like, if this happens, what it's going to do is it's going to force Apple to create their own search engine, and it's going to kick Google's ass. Because Apple doesn't do anything half-assed.
No, they're say what you want about Apple. Yeah. They're good at everything.
Yeah, they are. They will find a way to make their search engine the best.
They have found a way to convince half of America that the only computer you ever need is a Mac.
Yeah.
And I have a Mac. I love my Mac. But your first experience with a Mac, it's like being dropped into the jungle. You don't know where you are or what you're doing. You are completely lost because you look at the keyboard. You're trying to figure out how to italicize some shit, and you don't. You press like 4 buttons before you finally nail it, and then the next time you try it, you've forgotten the button you used because you're just pressing shit. I've had this Mac for 2 years. I still get confused about bold and italics. I'm like, oh my God.
Jason. I know you say you're a Marxist, but you just completely went off on a first world problem.
I did. I do all the time. Like now I'm thinking about the fact I got the peppermint in my mouth. I got to drink that. It's not going to taste the same. My life is over. This is the biggest problem ever. Forget my debt. I mean, come on.
A real existential crisis right
Yes,
here.
it's not going to taste. It's going to taste like a peppermint latte, and that's not what I ordered. So thanks, Obama.
Oh God, you're gonna make me die. I
So-
just sucked down like half my mint while I breathed it.
So this is where we are. This is where we are. You're turning red, dude. So now what? If people are too, and I use the word educated loosely here, if they're too uneducated to see the problem, what do? Because they're not, they trust so easily what they see. And they're willing to ignore all the facts. And they don't realize they're being led around by the nose by social media. They have no idea.
No, they don't. And this goes back to the Facebook effect. The first thing you've got to do is get them off their phones.
Yes, you do.
The perfect scenario would be going back to a flip phone society.
Well, yeah, the only things you can do are call and text. You can't.
And texting is such a chore.
Yeah. Well, and the other question, does social media have a shelf life, or is it here in one form or another for good?
It's here forever. We'll have it forever. I think so. Yang talked about this. He talked about it when he had Tristan Harris on, and what he said was, or what the two of them basically came to an agreement on was that right now, just like with any industry, when you introduce the automobile to civilization, it explodes.
Yeah.
But then eventually that hype kind of calms down and it becomes a part of everyday life. And it doesn't become the number one thing in your life. It becomes a part of your life. Right now, social media is still exploding.
Yeah.
Right? But eventually it's going to become like the telephone, just another part of your life.
Yeah.
But I think what's the difference between all those other great inventions in the past and this is that this has the potential to polarize us to a degree we've never been polarized.
Or to a degree from which we cannot recover.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
That's the difference. And we've got to get a hold of, that's what we got to get a hold of.
That so you use the automobile as your example, which is not a bad one. But it's not hard to be educated on how to use the automobile well.
It's not.
It is exceedingly difficult to be educated on how to use social media well. It is exceedingly difficult.
Well, because we're still learning.
Well,
we're still in the infancy.
Yeah, but no. So I mean, I don't disagree with you, but that's not the bigger problem. The bigger problem is we're not giving people skills.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, education doesn't teach critical thinking at an early age. If it did, we wouldn't have any of this bullshit.
What have I been saying for the past 10 years? It's not that we don't know how to use the technology. When we're talking about the classroom, bringing technology to the classroom, we need to have I want every student to walk in without a backpack and all they have is a tablet. That's what I want. That's the future of education. It's going to come down to they're not going to have a laptop. They're not going to have anything but a tablet. That's it.
Yep.
Everything they need is going to be on that tablet. They'll have a pen. They'll write on the tablet, all that. The reason why we haven't gotten there, because the tablet has been around for 10 years now.
It has.
And I've been saying every year, the problem isn't that we don't have the technology, and the problem isn't that the technology is bad. The technology is neutral.
Yeah.
It's that we don't know how to use it.
We don't know how to use it. But see, that's okay. So, mega distinction between hardware and software.
Mm-hmm.
The technology you're talking about is the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
The software, the things that aren't made of moving parts, the thing that exists in the ether, is social media.
Yeah.
And in order to understand social media, you have to be educated in critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a requirement
No.
in school. And we should be teaching critical thinking classes from a very early age.
Well, it's also, when I talk about the technology in the classroom, and they've already started doing this. They're actually doing what I've been complaining about. You give them the technology from the get-go, and you teach them how to integrate that technology into...
Sorry, go ahead.
Peppermint latte. And you teach them how to integrate that technology into everything they do in education, so that it becomes like the notebook. And I actually had a lesson on this when I taught critical thinking. The notebook was a huge advancement in education technology, because you could put so much knowledge into that notebook.
Yep.
Unlike one of those little chalkboard slates, you had to erase the knowledge every time you needed to use it. But with a notebook, you had storage, right? That's all the tablet's going to end up being. But they don't know how to use that tablet without playing games.
That's right.
Because they were taught to play games first.
Yes.
It should have been reverse, right?
Yep.
And so that's what they're doing now. We hear about, the Chromebooks going into the schools and all that. That is actually the step in the right direction, as far as if we're going to integrate this technology into education, they have got to be using it for a long time.
Your daughter uses it.
Yes.
They have it at her
She's
school.
a fourth grader, and she's got a Chromebook, and this is the second year she's had a Chromebook. The year before that, she had a Kindle.
Is it public school?
Mm-hmm.
They've got some money then.
Yeah. First grade, they had Leap Pads.
LeapPad is a great place to start because it's user friendly. It requires absolutely no effort.
Yeah.
And it prepares you for these tablets.
Yep.
So yes, I agree with you.
So now, apply that to social media. If they're learning in school how to actually use the technology correctly, social media usage will go down.
I hope you're right.
Because they will see that it's another tool to be a part of their life.
Yeah.
And that social media is just one of the many facets that they integrate with on that tablet. It's not the only facet.
The other good news is that Gen Z isn't going to use Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
My son,
Well, neither one of my kids get on there.
my 16-year-old loves Reddit. And if there's a more sarcastic place on the internet, I don't know where it is, but the sarcasm on Reddit requires you to be thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
It requires you to interpret.
Right.
And all sides are there.
Well, Luke and Ezra are YouTubers.
Yeah, well, and so's my kid. He likes YouTube too.
And Jupiter is big into TikTok. So.
Although TikTok's got some problems. Like the idea that they may not be here much longer unless Microsoft acts now.
Well, I think they're trying. They're working to get it done.
But no, I think because Gen Z is not affected by the same social media that we are and that our parents are.
Yeah. Yeah, but Jonathan Haidt is still right in that. You watched that Rogan episode, right? Where he talked about the numbers.
I'm not sure I did. I'm not sure I've seen that. Oh, yes.
Where he talks about the numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, about the teen self-harm numbers.
Because of body image
and Instagram and
yeah.
And really the big culprit is Instagram. When you talk about that, it's Instagram.
So we've got to teach them how to be more cautious.
Yeah.
I mean, your Hum 115, that's critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Your critical thinking students got the same lessons mine did, and they were grateful afterward too. And they probably will never, at least mine and yours, I don't know about anybody else's, my students and your students in those classes will never look at the world the same way again.
Good, they don't need to.
And they'll be a lot more cautious, and they will ask the question, what is this organization trying to sell me?
Yeah.
And if it's a nonprofit, you can probably trust them.
Well, look at my first paper in 112.
Yeah.
It's all about stripping away the bias and looking for the narrative. And the narrative is not the story. The narrative is how they're spinning the story.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, I don't know, man. I mean, what's the cliche? It's not a cliche. Well, maybe it is now. This thing with the New York Post is just a canary in the coal mine. You know, it really is. It's an indication of a bigger problem.
Yeah.
It's a symptom of a disease, not the disease itself.
Yeah.
And it's a damn shame that media, not even Fox News is covering this.
Yeah, they are.
Are they covering it the way we're talking about? How they
No.
were taking it? See, that's the problem.
Well, to be honest, I haven't watched Tucker, so I don't know. I don't know what Tucker's... I need to go and look and see what Tucker's been saying about this.
It would surprise me if he didn't mention the fact that this was taken down immediately.
Yeah.
And if he didn't, he's missing a golden opportunity.
Oh, I know. Because that's his line.
Well, and it should be talked about.
You know, it's not like Handy, where Handy would be like, the aliens are trying to control you, and they're just trying to... Or no, Handy's line would be, they're out to destroy Trump. That would be his line. Tucker would actually say, like, they're trying to control you. They're controlling their narrative.
And he's right.
And he's right.
But we've already said that he's not... Tucker Carlson acts like a classic conservative.
Yeah.
Sean Hannity acts like a nut job. I mean, he's just insane.
Well, Laura Ingraham is even further on
Oh
the scale.
my God. I'm trying to think of
Laura
a...
Ingraham would be like, the lizard people are doing this.
I'm trying to think of a classic liberal on liberal media. I'm trying to think of one that we have.
Tapper, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, Chuck Todd is a classic liberal. It's just Chuck Todd is also in for ratings. He's got the longest running television program in history.
Yeah.
That's what he's got. He's got a brand that he has to uphold. Tapper doesn't have a brand to uphold. He's got 2 fucking shows.
Yeah, and they're both relatively new.
Yeah. Well, they're Jake Tapper new.
Yeah, I mean they've only been around as long as he's been around, as opposed to Chuck Todd.
Yeah.
Meet the Press has been around for
Eons.
donkey's years.
Well,
yeah.
like I said, it's the longest running program in history. There's not a television show that's older.
No. So, I mean, is it safe to say it's too late for Gen X and baby boomers in terms of buying in to the media? What makes it so bad for me is that Gen X is supposed to be a cynical generation.
Right.
But we're not cynical enough to spot the problem.
I will point out...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I will point this out. In this very podcast, few of the... most of the people we've talked about, Brett Weinstein, Heather Hayek, Gen Xers. James Lindsay.
Gen X, yeah.
Tucker.
Gen X.
Most of the voices that are speaking up, Taibbi, Gen X. The people who are speaking up
Jonathan Haidt.
Jonathan Haidt's Gen X.
Yep.
All of the people that are speaking up against this are Xers.
And that's encouraging.
And you have older millennials like the Sagar and Jetties and the Crystal Balls and the Kyle Kalinskis. These are older millennials that are speaking up too, that are on that border, that line. Before, the younger millennials that came in that knew cell phones from the day they were born.
Who's not speaking up?
The millennials.
The boomers.
And the boomers. Well, the boomers don't care anymore.
No.
They know they're done.
No, and they've also drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Because they're not comfortable with the technology.
Yeah.
But they're using the technology, and they're using it rather naively, and the reason is because they grew up with Walter Cronkite, and you can trust him. This is something I've said before.
Taibbi talks about that. You've got to read that book, Jason.
What's it called? Hate Incorporated?
Yeah. Yep, Hate Inc. And it's wonderful because it's got a picture of Maddow and a picture of Hannity, and they're both staring at each other. Because they're the same thing.
They're mirror images.
And we don't want to talk about that. How dare you compare Rachel Maddow to Sean Hannity?
Or vice versa, yeah.
Or vice versa. The reality is they're the same person. They're just saying different things.
Yep, I agree with that. I don't know, man. I mean...
And if she's listening, I know you are going to send me a bunch of text messages as soon as you hear this.
I don't know. I've kind of always been cynical of media.
Yeah.
The moment it really kind of hit me hard, though, was after 9/11. Not long after 9/11, weeks, and I had CNN on, and I was reading, and I stopped, I'm like, what did you just say? And it was one of their anchors reading the news.
Yeah.
She said, and I've told you this story.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about rhetorical analysis? This is what she said. New York City was targeted today by Pakistani protesters. I'm like, someone has lost their damn mind. Because all you're trying to do now is scare people.
Yeah.
Putting New York City first, then the word targeted.
Okay.
Targeted?
So you and I have talked about GW. And, GW in hindsight doesn't look so bad anymore.
No, he doesn't.
But one of the things that at the moment, at the time that it happened, I actually had admiration for him. When he came out and he said, we will distinguish between Muslim and radical Islam.
Yes.
And he came out and told the American people on Fox News and MSNBC and all the others, we will treat everybody like Americans. I'll never forget that.
It was a great moment for him.
It was a really great moment for him. That and when he showed up with the bullhorn.
And then he signed the Patriot Act.
And
it's like, oh, George.
Well, and then, he let Rumsfeld and Cheney talk him into WMDs.
Yes, he did. Yellow cake. I'm sorry, man. There's no yellow cake.
Strategery.
The only yellow cake that George W. Bush knows about comes out of a Betty Crocker box.
I'm sorry. He won so many. I know we've talked about this before, and I don't care. The dodging the shoes, man, that was so good. Because he's standing there and goes,
he should have been an athlete.
I know.
As opposed to Trump, who ran away. A real man doesn't run away. He dodges the shoes.
He dodges the shoes. And the look on his face is like, who the fuck are you? It was so good.
So no, and I think the other reason why we're so cynical about social media, and my wife got on Facebook when it was only for college students.
Yeah.
And when they let everybody in, the entire tenor of it just changed.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Well, I remember, okay, so this is what I remember of Facebook, and I was actually, Lauren and I were talking about this the other day. When I first started on Facebook, which was 2007, 2008, I was still with Sarah when I started on Facebook. I still had my MySpace. And everybody was going to Facebook. And I remember setting up an account. It was 08. I remember setting up an account and getting on there and looking at it and thinking, this is so boring. How do I play music on my homepage? How do I? That was the thing about MySpace. You could do like the top 5, and you could have like your theme song. Then you had a playlist with 5 songs,
which is cool.
Which was so cool.
I never had MySpace.
Oh, I did. Oh, I loved MySpace. I still miss MySpace sometimes. I think about it, I'm like, I wish I had MySpace right now. But I remember it was like so boring. And then one night, I walk in to the living room. We had our family computer in the living room. And Sarah's on Facebook, and she's playing a game. And I'm like, what's she doing? And she's like, it's called Farmville. And that was it.
Yeah, well.
That is how Facebook got me. I had a freaking farm.
I gotta tell you, from personal experience, real farming sucks.
Yeah. Well, that game sucked.
But you loved it.
Oh, yes, I was hooked.
And
I remember a couple years. You remember when Candy Crush came out?
Yes. I've never played it.
I never played it either, but I think I was married to Ashley at the time. This is so sad. I think I was actually married. This
is how you date your events in your life. To whom was I married at the time?
Who was I married to? Candy Crush came out and Ashley got into Candy Crush. And I would sit there and watch her play it, and I'm like, I don't understand. And then I started paying attention to her while she's playing it, and it's just like you zone out.
Yeah.
Just right in. And that's how they got, that used to be how they got you. That was before they started pissing people off. One of our colleagues, their husband, was a troll, and he lives for getting on Facebook and just trolling people.
Oh, I know who you're talking
You know what I'm
about.
talking about? Yeah, that's all. He has been put in Facebook jail so many times.
He brags about
brags
it
about
on
it.
Facebook. I'm like, oh, dude. I try not to be proud of him, but I kind of am.
I kind of am too.
Because he's trolling the side that I don't get along with, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
But if I were one of his conservative friends, I would be really
There
upset.
was one time.
If he
There
has
was one
conservative
time
friends.
I was up there. I was talking to him, and he was in the middle of one of his like deep trolls where he had found a target, and he went after him, right? And he's telling me how it all started, and I'm thinking, I didn't say it to him, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why? Because why? I don't get it. What is the point? You're not going to change him.
He doesn't want to change.
He doesn't care. That's it.
It's fun.
It's fun. Because he knows he's going to get a reaction.
He knows he's going to be put in Facebook jail again.
Yeah.
And he's going to enjoy every second of it. And he's going to, and his favorite part is coming out of Facebook jail and telling everyone how he was put in Facebook jail. And then he starts plotting the next event.
He goes looking for the next victim.
He is.
But and the thing is, and Lauren will sit there and she'll post something, right? She'll post something like, I don't understand, like, I don't know, I'm gonna make this generic. She'll post something like, I don't understand why Trump people are so stupid, right? And then somebody will comment. And I'm like, okay, number one, why did you post that? Number
don't
two,
post that.
don't reply.
Ever.
Don't reply. Because the minute you do, you're going to be sucked in and you're going to be sitting there for an hour. And then you're going to get mad. And you're going to be mad all night. And then you're going to delete the post. What ends up happening? 5 minutes later, and it's on.
And then she's angry for
Yep.
an hour or all night, and
All
she
night,
deletes the post.
And she deletes the post.
Gee, it's almost like it's predictable.
It's cyclical. And there'll be like 30 or 40 replies before when she finally deletes the post. I'm like, just don't answer, don't reply. First of all, don't make the
Don't
post.
post at all.
Right? But if you do make the post, just leave it up and leave it alone.
Just take a picture of your dogs, put them up.
That's her Instagram.
Well, she needs to try that same tactic on
Right.
Facebook.
Yeah. Her Instagram, what's cute about her Instagram is it's all pictures of dogs, me or her, right? Or some like redundant, generic philosophy, right? Like, you know, if you get up in the morning and you think happy thoughts, your day will be bright, you know? Those kinds of things. Don't ever let somebody tell you that you're not worth what you are. You're worth double what you are, you know? Those kind of things. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
They're the old emails.
They are.
You remember?
Oh, I do.
That's her Instagram. It's completely different from her Facebook.
In which she gets really angry.
Yeah. She doesn't get angry on Instagram.
Well, no, that's happy.
Yeah.
That's unicorn shitting rainbows happy.
Okay, so I promised on the last beta files on the Facebook effect that I would tell the audience what happened to me on Instagram that made me decide I'm done with Instagram. So I'm going to tell this story. I think I told you about it. If not, you're in for a hoot. So I was on Instagram one morning, and you know, they show you your feed or your news feed for people that you follow. And then underneath that, they give you suggested feeds, right? The third feed down, or the third suggestion down for that particular morning was a black Republican police officer. And I thought, this ought to be good. So I clicked, went to his page, and I just looked at his Instagram stuff, right? Typical Republican narrative, Blue Lives Matter, but he was African American.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that is a really cool mix right there.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding.
Got off Instagram, didn't think anything about it. The next morning, I get up. It was a Saturday morning. I open up my Instagram. I go through my normal feed, all the people that I follow. The top suggested post was from the Church of Satan.
Even cooler.
And I'm looking down like, Instagram, what the hell? What did I do? Did I murder a goat in my sleep while you were watching? What happened? And the only thing I can figure is when I clicked on that black Blue Lives Matter police officer Republican dude, Instagram put something in my algorithm to show right-wing extremism. And so I guess like that day, the most extreme thing you could find was the Church of Satan in their calendar of events.
Oh my God.
The best part was the picture. The picture. It's this dude and this girl, this bald-headed dude and this blonde-headed woman. They're both dressed completely in black. They're sitting in these like dining room chairs, these big dining room chairs they have painted gold.
It's really cheesy.
It was so bad. Behind them is like this really torn and tattered pentagram hanging on the wall. In the description, click below for our calendar of events. And I'm like, oh, I gotta see it.
Was it good?
No, they were just going to be doing a bake sale, and they were going to be doing like these other things, like they were having a worship service on Zoom, and they had the info for the Zoom call and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God.
It's just like church.
It is. And so I was like, Jesus, Instagram. And so that's when I decided, you know what? I can't do this anymore. Instagram has now sent me the Church of Satan.
That might be enough reason for me to stay, to see what they pop up the next morning.
I know, right?
Al-Qaeda. Look at our calendar of events. A bake sale using yellow cake.
Click here for a bomb recipe.
Yeah.
Or this week's bomb, or featured bomb recipe. Oh, it was so bad. And I was like, what the fuck? And so that's when I was like, no.
You're
and
done.
So, yeah, so I did shut down my personal account. The beta files is still up there, but not for long. It'll be coming down in January.
That's entertainment.
Yeah. So, yeah. But talking about how they silo you, Instagram kind of really missed the mark on that one. I mean, they just skipped right over the KKK and went straight for Lucifer.
I think it's kind of cool. I really do. I can't help it. I'm a little jealous.
I can't believe it.
I should go check out the Church of Satan on Instagram. See what their calendar of events is. A bake sale at 9, worship the Dark Lord at 10, 11, brunch.
Oh my God.
Worship the Dark Lord at 10.
Oh, so yeah.
I think that's actually a really great place to stop.
I think so too. All right. I'm the barber. That's Dr. J. See y'all next week. If we're here.
Now it's time for Dr. J.